Gotta be careful. So I was just going around the stool looking at it, and I realized that I caused a pretty big problem when I wrapped the first layer, which is the layer that you can still see on the end here. And so when I was pulling it tight, I heard some creaking coming from the stool, but I didn't really think too much about it. Now we have exposed a pretty big flaw, and that is you can see that these tenons are now poking all the way through, which they should not be doing. And so the trick is here is that what I've done with making this thing is I've broken the kind of the cardinal rule of round mortise and tenon joints, and that is I don't have a shoulder that's actually holding these things together. If you think about normal square mortise and tenon joinery, you always need a shoulder to then pull up against the sidewalls of the mortise. So if you have 3/4 inch stock, you're going to have a 3/8 thick tenon on there, and so you're going to have at least 3/16 of a shoulder to then pull up against the sidewall. And so what I've done here is that I just have 5/8 going all the way down the length of these tenons areas. There is a taper back here, so I may be able to save this. And so what I should have done is when I had all my holes drilled, I should have gone in and reamed them. Now, a reamer is this little tool right here, and all it is it's an angled piece of metal that then widens out your holes and creates a taper to them. Then when you're turning your spindles on the lathe, you create that same taper on the end, and it pulls everything together, and it acts exactly like a shoulder would on a normal mortise and tenon, just round. So it makes it a little bit easier to work with and a little bit easier to create on the lathe, and overall just easier. Everything is easier in general. You could also do a stepped hole. I think I did that on the little mallet that I made a little while back. That worked pretty well too. That had the same principle to it, because then when I pounded in the wedge, it then pulled the whole handle up into that shoulder there that I created on the inside. So that would be the other way to do it. But the reamer is the proper way to do chair making, or stool making in this case. The only reason I didn't use the reamer is because I got impatient and it yeah, I didn't want to wait for it to arrive in the mail. But the sad thing is that like the day after, the day after I finished turning all the spindles, the reamer showed up much earlier than was expected. So it kind of kicked me in the butt there. But anyway, what I'm going to try and do to save this is I'm going to take all this webbing off as delicately as I can, because I already know that the first layer is the right length. The second layer, just I don't have anything actually tacked in yet. It's still all loose on there. So that's going to be pretty easy to get off. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and break all these joints with some clamps. So I've got my pretty strong pipe clamps that I can use. That should be more than enough pressure to break these joints. A few of them are actually just starting to go. So this one leg, I knew it was weak. I think the bottom one was loose when I was cleaning it up with the spoke shave. Then the middle one was really the only one that was holding strong, and the top one, again, same thing, was just a little bit loose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and break all these joints. So we're going to lose a little bit of width on the stool here. And then when I do put it back together, I'm going to actually put these I'm going to put the spindles in as deep as they will possibly go. I'm going to push this whole thing together with clamping pressure so that it is as solid as it possibly can get, and everything is being pulled tight together. Then once we weave the top, that will solidly hold everything together perfectly. Alright, and so that does it for the stool. The seat is all nicely woven on there now, and everything came together pretty well. And so there was one minor problem when I started weaving the seat. The amount of pressure that this cotton webbing applies to all the stretchers on this thing is extreme. It's even more apparently than the pipe clamps that I used to glue this thing up. Because as you guys saw, when I glued this up the second time, I put all of this under the full pressure that those pipe clamps could put on them. And just by doing this weaving on with the cotton webbing here, these two joints on the top here have pushed through again. So this also highlights the kind of the issue of having a squared off hole. So I explained this in the kind of the last clip where I was talking about it. The holes that are in there, they're just a straight through hole, no taper, no anything. And the problem is that as you compress those fibers around the square edges of those holes, they end up moving and doing stuff like this. So this tool is pretty much for the rest of its life, it's going to kind of slowly pull itself inwards, and you're going to lose a little bit of tension in the seat. All of that's not really a big idea because this is basically just going to be a shop stool for me. But in the future, if I'm making like a chair, dining room chair or something with this woven seat, what I need to make sure I do is use the reamer to make a taper on all of those supporting holes. Because that'll mean you're not pulling a tapered object, which is the spindle, up against a square sidewall of the hole. It'll mean that everything is kind of pulled together and there's a maximum space that everything can get pulled to while being under tension. So that's the biggest takeaway from this. But like I said, I'm overall very happy with how this thing came out.